Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Everyone, welcome to our Tuesday, December 14, Sioux Falls City Council meeting. We'll get started here by taking our roll, please.
Council members Erickson, Jensen,
Here.
Kiley,
Here.
Neitzer,
Here.
Selberg,
Here.
Sale,
Here.
Starr,
Here.
Brecky. Here.
All right, we welcome Pastor Lane Nelson from Eastside Lutheran to give our invocation tonight. So I'd ask that you stand for that and then stay standing for our Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Good evening and welcome. It's an honor to be with you here for your annual Christmas party and White Elephant gift exchange tonight. Why don't we begin our time in prayer? Gracious God, we come to you as the days continue to get darker and the weather's colder. We ask that you would be with this city and all of its residents as we approach these dark times, but yet we know that the light is building. As we get ready for your continuing light to be in our midst, we pray that you would be with this city and all its residents, especially those who are most vulnerable, that you would keep them warm and safe and surround them with people who will show them your love. Tonight, as we sit in this room, we ask that you would be with these leaders whom you have called to be here, that you would give them strength, clarity of vision, wisdom, and compassion, that they might guide and govern as you call them to faithfully in their positions. In all of this, may we have a sense of meaning and purpose, that we are being about making the world and this city in particular a better place. Bless us and guide us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Lane. Thank you. Is that your coffee? All right, thanks Pastor Nelson for leading us in our invocation tonight. We'll move on to item 4, it's our consent agenda. Look for a motion or any changes to be made there.
Move approval.
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Selberg, seconded by Jensen. Any discussion on that? All right, let's take a vote, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Neitzer,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Brecky. Yes.
That one passes 7-0. Move to the next item as our regular agenda, item 8. Look for a motion there, please.
Move to approve.
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Kiley, seconded by Jensen to approve that. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on that one, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Neitzer,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Brecky. Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Just before we jump ahead, just want to review how public input works for our meetings. For regular agenda items, comments are limited to 3 minutes unless the item is being presented for final adoption, in which case public input will be limited to 5 minutes. For all regular agenda items, comments are limited to the agenda item under consideration only. During general public input at the end of the meeting, comments will be no more than 3 minutes per person. So with that being said, we'll move on to item 9, please.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, granting a non-exclusive natural gas franchise to Mid-American Energy Company and Iowa Corporation to furnish and sell natural gas to the city and its inhabitants. Sponsor, Mayor.
Good evening, Kurt.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Kurt Peppel representing Public Works. This is an ordinance second reading for a Mid-American franchise agreement. If approved, this agreement will allow Mid-American to continue providing gas service in Sioux Falls for the next 20 years. Public Works and the City Attorney's Office started working with Mid-American earlier this year with the goal of having the new agreement in place by the fourth quarter of 2021. Their existing 20-year agreement is set to expire May 2nd of 2022. This agreement is very similar to other recently executed franchise agreements. The agreement primarily focuses on requirements for the installing and maintaining Mid-American facilities in the right-of-way. Representatives from Mid-American are here, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, Kurt, thanks. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one tonight? All right, Council, got any questions for Mr. Peppel on this one? Go ahead, Councilor Neitzer.
This isn't directly related to the franchise agreement, but it's probably a good opportunity. I've received some questions regarding the cost of natural gas. Maybe one of the representatives could confirm. Number one, is there any addition or margin added to the cost of the actual natural gas that's charged to the customers?
I'll have Mark with Mid-American come.
Okay.
See if he can answer.
I believe they just pass it on, the cost of natural gas. Do you upcharge when you pass it on to customers? And then just give us a little educational, how are natural gas prices set?
Okay. I'm Mark Renders. I'm the franchise manager for Mid-American Energy Company. The short answer to your first part of the question was what we are charged for the gas is what we charge our customers. It's a straight pass-through. Second part is a little more of an unknown. Prices were projected to be considerably higher coming into this winter season, and they have been. However, in the last week or two or three, the prices have actually stabilized and have started to show a decline in the prices. So we're cautiously optimistic that, you know, that the prices are going to be competitive for our customers.
And natural gas is sold on the open market like oil and other commodities?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And then, so like, if the price fluctuates in terms of like, for us as customers, are you securing longer-term contracts where you kind of lock in for a whole season, or are we seeing fluctuations? How would that look over a winter?
We're a combination of both. Actually, we do a lot of buying ahead of the winter season and put it into underground storages facilities, and then we bring that into our market that we buy on a day-to-day, a week-to-week basis as well, to try to keep those spikes and the highs and lows from hitting any customers on any time.
Okay, and then finally, do you do any exploration, for lack of a better term, of, you know, drilling and getting natural gas, or do you buy it all off of the market?
We buy it all in the market. We're not into the drilling part of it.
Okay.
We have access to 3 or 4 different gas companies and providers out there, which gives us a little bit of an advantage out there, because if its price is high on supplier A, then we go to customer or supplier B.
Okay, thank you, because I've just, and I've seen it myself, and I knew it was coming, but I've received some questions from customers as to, you know, the cost per therm is maybe 3 times higher than it was last year, and why is that, and are they charging more? And so to know that you're just passing on the cost that you pay for it, there's no upcharge.
Right, and a lot of that's tied to some of the problems with the market earlier this year with the weather patterns, the Oklahoma and Texas freezing temperatures that ended up shutting down a lot of facilities down there, so they weren't able to bring as much product online as they normally do. So that's why, again, as customers, we pay more if there's not enough commodity out there. And
Supply and demand is what's
supply and demand is
driving.
correct.
Okay, thanks.
After this season, hopefully it's going to be back. They'll be back in full production, and that'll help us.
Thank you.
Having said that, Mid-American just wants to thank the city for providing the continuing service from Mid-American. Stacy and his legal team and Kurt were extremely easy to work with, and we appreciate the competitiveness and the aspects that they brought to the table. So thanks for the team.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mid-American folks or for Kurt from the council? All right, I look for a motion on this item.
Move approval, Sale.
Second, Neitzer.
All right, motion by Counselor Sale, seconded by Neitzer to approve item 9. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on that, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Neitzer,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Brecky.
All right, that passes 7-0. Next item, please.
Item 10, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, approving the 15.81 MGD expansion commitment agreement by and between Lewis and Clark Rural Water System, Inc. and the City of Sioux Falls. Sponsor, Mayor.
Hey, Mark?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'd like to first recognize Gavin Graverson is in the audience. He runs the water plant, water team. He's also our member on the Lewis and Clark board, and we're also fortunate to have the executive director, Troy Larson, is here. Troy's been the executive director for 18 years, going on 19 years, done a very good job leading that organization, 20 members, Without the predictable stream of dollars that come from the federal government, and these 20 communities are in very good shape from a longstanding water because of Lewis and Clark. This expansion agreement, as we talked about last week, will expand the firm capacity of the plant from 44.19 million gallons per day up an additional 15.81, which would round it to 60 million gallons per day of capacity. Some number of efficiencies were put in the original system, so some key modifications, which is this expansion agreement allows us to partake in, will allow the city of Sioux Falls to take our allocated share from 28 million gallons of water per day up to 34.4 million gallons of water per day. And it's additional 6.4 million gallons of water that we'll have access to once the expansion is completed. Just to give you a perspective, and Troy shared this, just with the efficiencies, this plant expansion for the additional 15.81 million gallons per day will cost in today's dollars approximately $100 million. The Sioux Falls portion of that, based on the original agreements and our allocated percentage, will be about $50 million of that cost. To put that into some perspective, Minnehaha Community Rural Water and Big Sioux Water are teaming together to build a plant together north of Del Rapids. The plant, the well field, the distribution system to build about 8 million gallons of water capacity will cost about $170 million. So the value in these gallons of water is there and really allows the existing 20 members to participate, all of which are participating in this expansion to get their percentage of allocation. So we're here to answer questions, and we'd also like to have your support tonight.
All right, thanks, Mark. Anyone from the public here to speak on item 10 tonight?
Scott Ersman, Sioux Falls. This is a great idea and a great opportunity. When this first came in front of the City Council, my friend Mr. Staggers and I had a long conversation about this. He supported it, I did not, told him it was a bad idea. I look back on that now and how wrong I was. This is a very good idea, expansion. A few years ago when Senator Al Franken was still senator in Minnesota, I ran into him at a political event up in Minneapolis, and we had a great conversation about this and how he really wanted to expand this in the tri-state area. He really wanted to put a lot of federal dollars into it. I don't know how far he got. I don't know if it was because he had left before that all happened. But I think that we're going to learn as we get further down the road that with drought and other things, that investing money in water pipelines is a much better idea than investing money in oil pipelines. Comedian and political commentarist Bill Maher a few months ago mentioned, he says it's so funny because we talk about all these water issues we have all over the country, and it's everywhere, it's not just here. And how he's always told that we can't build water pipelines, but somehow we can figure out how to build a pipeline across our country from Canada to the Gulf Coast that pushes tar sand oil. We have the technology to do that, but somehow we don't have the technology to do water. We're going to find that we're going to need to start spending more money on water projects, solar projects, wind projects, and this whole effort of spending tax dollars and stuff to increase the fossil fuel industry is ludicrous. And this is a good way to spend taxpayer money. And you know, as Sioux Falls grows, we all know that, and drought conditions and other things, that we're going to have every option available for water. And I'm sure you all know too about the hazards of the, I think they're called P4s, or I'm probably saying that wrong, but how many of our wells, even some here in Sioux Falls, were polluted due to this foam. It's a chemical that basically, once it enters your body, it stays there forever, and it can cause all kinds of issues. And pretty much once it's infected a well, you cannot use that well ever again. And of course, you could use it, but you'd be infecting people. So it's always good to have different sources of things we did. It's too bad we didn't have the vision to spend the money on the wastewater plant and on this project before we blew money on that tin shed out there that nobody goes to. But, you know, that's my opinion about taxes and what they should be spent on. Some people disagree with me, but I've never heard that, I've never seen anywhere in the city charter or in the U.S. Constitution that tax dollars need to be used to entertain people. It's used for infrastructure and other things. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight? All right, council, you have any questions for Mark, Gavin, Troy on this one?
Move approval, Jensen.
Second, Kylie.
All right, motion by Jensen, seconded by Counselor Kylie. Any discussion on this one, council? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
Brecky.
Okay, that passes 7-0. Item 11, please.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota by revising boundaries for voting precincts as set forth in Section 38.003 of Chapter 38 Elections. Sponsors, council members Jensen and Sale.
Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This is a follow-on to obviously the first reading. This changes and memorializes the changes that were implemented or proposed by the district and commission. They proposed in their plan to move 6 precincts. Those are identified in the top left to other districts to better equalize the district populations. So this ordinance does that simply by renaming those precincts on the left under current to the proposed precincts on the right. There's also one other minor change in the southwest to precinct 1-17. Presently, its western limits are Ellis Road, and it really should be western city limits to capture that recently annexed land to the west. So it would continue indefinitely. Subject to your questions, that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Tom. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight?
Scott Ersman, Sioux Falls. I thought that the districting commission did some really good work, especially with changing the central district. They really put it into what it was meant to be central. I think Tom Hurlbert really pushed that, and then Mark and then the other members really got on board. I've often wondered why Whittier and Cathedral were never a part of that whole thing. Now, if you ask most people in Sioux Falls what district they live in, they probably wouldn't have a clue unless they're regular voters. And we all know with city elections and especially school board elections, that it's very minimal. I've suggested for a long time that the city spend a little money and do a very hardcore education on people in the city, explaining to them what districts they live in, explaining to them when to vote, why it's important to vote. But, you know, I bet you couldn't even, I joked once, I said, if you went downtown and you asked somebody if they were a registered Sioux Falls voter and they said yes, if they could name all 8 city councilors, they wouldn't get there. It would be very rare that you'd get someone that could do it. And we all say, well, no, you know, people don't vote. But I never see the city ever push a city election. I never see it. I never see anybody going out and saying, vote. You know, it's like we go after the typical people who vote. And as a person who ran several council races that were successful, you'd be shocked when you look over the data of who actually votes. It's a very tiny little percent of people. And you don't need $127,000 to win an election. You can actually probably win one with $5,000 or $6,000. You know, if you actually knew who voted. Of course, the last election got screwed up because of COVID. And they played the little game of throwing it in with the primaries to get a bunch of people who normally don't vote in city elections and probably didn't really know who the candidates were. But I think with the new districts, this is a prime opportunity for the council to put something together, put a little money aside for a marketing plan to really show people why it's important to vote and why your district is important. You know, I told someone who told me they were thinking about running for Central District against the incumbent, I said, you got to understand something. It's a whole different district now. The people who voted for the incumbent the last time around, there's a whole new bunch of voters. In some respects, he's really not an incumbent because he's got a whole brand new district. So, I mean, there's a reason why we need to talk to people about elections and why they're important. You know, do I want ignorant people to vote? No, I don't, but they do. And we don't know if we're going to be able to stop that. But I thought the district commission did a wonderful job. I personally reached out to Mr. Millage and told him he did. And they did really nice work, and they did it in a very efficient manner. And I think Jeff Schmidt really did a wonderful job in an efficient manner to do this. And they really researched this well. So there's one city board that did their task well.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this? Come on up. Good evening.
Mike Zitter to Sioux Falls. I'd just like to take the time. This has been a pretty good learning curve for me this year. I've been taking part in the. I paid more attention to the district. I think they did a very good job for under the things that we're under. What I'd like to see going forward, I'd like to start. What would this city be like in 30 years from now? 30 years ago, we had what, 100,000 people. Today, we have 195,000. What could we have? 200? Could we be pushing 300,000? And my thoughts are, I would like to see this body create a task force in preparation for 2030 and beyond, and kind of see where's the growth of this town going to be like in 2050. How many residents are we going to have per each district? We might be pushing 50,000 residents in each district. I mean, that's going to be a lot of people to represent. I think I'm a big believer in smaller districts. I think that gives us a better representation of who we are as a city. And I'd just like to see you guys kind of start this discussion going forward, whether it's a task force or in committee meetings and stuff like that. And just some thoughts I've thought about throughout this whole process. I mean, what in 30 years, what's the city going to be like? And is there going to be is there a chance to revise the charter to create smaller districts, more districts, give the district commission a little more authority to realign the districts more properly? How many residents will reside on the outer edges? I think as we see, I think the central core is actually shrinking. What if we were to open that up and divide it up into 3 different districts? And what's the thought of giving downtown its own district? Like, and then just some of my thoughts. I think it's been part of the governing process is to always adapt to the future change, and give this body make this body more representative of the people itself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight? All right, Council, you have any questions for Tom on this? Councilor Neitzer?
I understand this is probably partly out of your hands, but would you have any idea at how long it will be before somebody types in their name in the SOS search and it will say you're in this precinct and it's their new precinct?
So not till January 7th can we do that. So later this week, I'll speak again with the county auditor about updating the registration file. So what we did back in 2017 is basically on that 20th day, we started the process of updating, and it took about a week.
Okay, thank you.
And just piggybacking on that, we will also include it in the budget, our postcards to send to each one of the affected individuals, or at least households with registered voters in these precincts.
Okay, any other questions for Tom?
Move approval, Jensen.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Jensen, I think seconded by Counselor Sale there. Any discussion on this, council? All right, let's take a vote, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Brecky.
All right, that one passes 7-0. Item 12, please.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, setting the regular city election date for Tuesday, April 12, 2022, and authorizing a joint election with the Sioux Falls School District Number 49-5. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, December 21st, 2021. Sponsors are council members Jensen and Sale.
Tom?
Mayor and council members, so as the title suggests, this sets the date of the election, which is actually set by city charters the second Tuesday in April. This upcoming year would be the 12th of April. If we were to have a runoff, this ordinance also provides for that to be on May 3rd of 2022. But more importantly, what this does is it authorizes the combination of us with the Sioux Falls School District. Last month, they passed a resolution authorizing such a joint election. If you pass this, then we would obviously have a joint election with the Sioux Falls School District. Their most recent election, we have an agreement with them. Their most recent election cost approximately $42,500. Those are the dollars that we can recoup. It costs more than that, but that's what we recoup for this election based on the agreement. So I know that came up there in budget time. We would be reimbursed $42,500. Subject to questions, that's all I have.
Thanks, Tom. Anyone from the public would like to speak on this item?
Scott Erskine, Sioux Falls. I really think that the council should consider changing the ordinance back to plurality on council races. I don't think we need runoffs in council races. I think it's silly. We find that runoffs doesn't really represent the same kind of voters or the same amount of voters or the same percentage. Such a low voter turnout, there's no reason we need to have a runoff in a council race. There was a reason why this never passed the first time around. It got passed with someone walking out the door who, quite honestly, was not a very good city councilor, and he was trying to punish another city councilor for, winning by plurality. There's nothing wrong with plurality. I don't approve of ranked choice voting because I don't think voting is a chili cook-off.
Is this about the election date?
It
the
is. It
ordinance?
is about the
It's
election
not,
date.
So get to the topic
It
at hand.
is about the election date, and I have 3 minutes. Thank you. So I would really like to see you guys change before the election date. Would like to see you change to plurality before that, and so that we don't have a runoff for council races. Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak on this one tonight? All right, council, any questions here?
Move approval, Jensen.
Second, Kylie.
All right, motion by Jensen, seconded by Kylie. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on it, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Brecky.
All right, that passes 7-0. Item 13, please.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, proposing a city charter amendment for the 2022 April election under the authority of Charter Article 8, Charter Amendment, Section 8.01B. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, December 21st, 2021. Sponsors, council members Selberg and Nitzert.
Counselor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been talking about this for quite some time. It's been a bit of a head scratcher to me for a while, how the position of mayor in Sioux Falls, the CEO of an organization known as the City of Sioux Falls, which oversees 1,300 plus full-time employees, 11 city departments, an annual budget of $650 million, is a position presently being compensated at a wage below virtually every other department head that this office oversees and that reports to him or her, depending on who holds the seat. And to be clear, this is about the office and the position, not just its current occupant. It is my belief that this position has been undercompensated for far too long for the responsibilities that come with the job. And I would hope that if the last year and a half has taught us nothing, it's that we definitely need the best people and talent to fill the seats of city leadership, and none is more important than our chief executive. And quite frankly, compensation is a major piece of that conversation. Be it a Mayor Tenhaken, a Mayor Islam, Zakaitis, or whoever else may throw their hat in the ring for the upcoming election. And that brings up the timing of this subject. I had intended to bring this forward earlier this year as campaign season had just gotten started, but learned an amendment could not be proposed outside of 120 days from the election. I still believe it's an opportune time to put this topic and decision to the public, as there may very well be folks out there still contemplating taking the big step and sacrifice of offering their time and talents to public service for the upcoming election. The focus of this amendment is the mayor's office, but it's also no secret that voting for this will also affect the wage of the councilors. And in that regard, I would make the same argument that to get the best folks in these seats, compensation is a part of that conversation as well. I know that I and another councilor ran in the last city election. 2 of us ran unopposed, and I'm sure we'd like to both think that's because of our intimidating political presence, but I think we know better. In a city of nearly 200,000 citizens, we can do better to attract more to public service, and there needs to be more incentive to get more citizens involved. It comes down to this. The city charter is explicit on what section the city council can and cannot amend. The charter authors allowed the council to amend this section, and the council would be exercising this right and submitting it to you, the voters. And this is the key part of this. The key being you, the voters, will make the decision. You, the voters, will review the facts and figures involved and serve as HR directors, if you will, to determine compensation for your city leadership. I hope you will take into consideration the weight of this responsibility and decision and how it will play a significant role in the direction of your city in the years to come. The decision will be yours. And as I was discussing this topic recently with a colleague and a friend and a constituent, it kind of came down to the fact that, well, let me get this straight. You're simply laying out a fact, an argument for people to take a look at, and they'll make the decision. And I said, that's pretty much about it. He said, well, what could be more American than that? And I said, well, that's the idea. So I can't emphasize this enough. This will put the decision in your hands. I think it's a topic long overdue for review. So I thank you for your time and consideration. Would appreciate your support and the support of my colleagues in moving this forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one tonight?
Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. The only thing good about this amendment is that the people get to vote on it, and I will tell you that it will be voted down by a lot. I'm going to tell you why. Number one, first of all, I don't know who puts the agenda together, but there's nothing on here that says what this is when you look at the agenda on here. That needs to stop. That never used to be that way. Anyway, it's not that the mayor doesn't make enough money, it's that the directors make too much money. I brought this up to the CRC when we talked about one of my proposals. I told them, if you look around and do a study in the region, we are the #1 paying of directors in the region. We pay more than some directors more in Omaha, Lincoln, Des Moines, and Fargo, some even more than Minneapolis. We're the only one of all those cities that have our own doctor and the highest paid city employee. To say that the mayor doesn't make enough, that's not the fact. It's the fact that the directors make too much. And what is also left out on this is that the council pay is directly affected by the mayor pay. What they don't tell you in this is that their pay, which they make around $19,000 a year, they will make, if this passes, $29,000 a year. They will all get a $10,000 a year raise. Obviously, they didn't bring that up in this. So this isn't about raising the mayor's pay and about raising the council, it's also about raising the council pay. There's lots of issues with this. Now, does the mayor deserve raises? The mayor does get raises. They do it, it's in the charter, the way it's percentage has to do with inflation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So does the council. I just find it very odd, you know, at least we get to vote on this, but I find it very odd that we seem to think that the mayor needs to be making what the director's making. It should be the other way around. It should always be the other way around. The mayor and the directors don't run a corporation. Councilor Selberg said that he's the CEO. This isn't a for-profit operation, folks. By charter, he's the city manager. His job is to run the city and manage its employees. That is not a CEO, folks. That is not what a city is a for-profit institution. The mayor is very well compensated, $130,000 a year. And I suggest that director pay comes down. Maybe that should be on the ballot. That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Good evening.
Am I okay?
You're fine, you bet.
Dennis Hogan, Sioux Falls. I totally disagree with the previous speaker. Council is, and the mayor and directors are CEOs. If you want to really compare, and I've lived in a situation where I compare, this city is very well run. And what the previous speaker doesn't talk about is results. And I think a couple of things, 3 or 4 things, the way you ran the situation of the pandemic, the way you handled the riots, the economy, the whole thing. This city is well run. And if I compare it to other cities like Seattle, Minneapolis, Chicago, where they burn down buildings and it's encouraged by the elected officials, I think you all deserve a raise. The previous speaker, I don't know, he probably hasn't been out of town for a few years. Go take a walk downtown Chicago, San Francisco. You deserve a raise.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this item?
First off, we're not Chicago and we're not Seattle, Washington. So when you're an elected official, you do this from the kindness of your heart. You don't make a career out of it. It's because let me tell you something. I should be getting paid for helping the police and taking crime out my neighborhood when council members are supposed to be getting their hands dirty in my neighborhood. And I'm getting calls to 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So where's my pay? All of y'all should be giving me it. Every single one of you. Especially Central District, right? All of you. When we have potholes that's been sitting there for months, can't get a hold of nobody, I have to get Council Nitro to call in. We got those potholes fixed, didn't we? So this is a political move because it's election time, so we have to be brown noses and we have to get our noses up people's behinds. Because this is what politics is about, right? So we shouldn't be getting paid to do this kind of work. Not as an advocate. City Council is advocates. The mayor is an advocate. We cannot be making more than Christine Noem at the pier. So I say pass it, because government has a lot to learn. Pass it, let the citizens vote it be voted down, and then we'll get over this and come back. But it just amazes me that everybody wants to be rich at this. Advocacy work. You don't supposed to be getting paid for this kind of work. You don't supposed to be getting paid top dollars for this type of work y'all doing here. I don't think y'all will. Because I know some of y'all council members don't deserve what y'all get now. I have to go in the neighborhood and take care of the issues because some of the council members don't even email their citizens in their neighborhood. So I can't wait to the election so we can start upseating people. And please, my words is going to be gold because this election is going to be something. So I should go knocking on city council members' doors to say, where's my pay for taking care of your district here? 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Especially in some of these districts, because they're wine drinkers and they don't want to go to a district where they have to drink beer. Because they always want to represent everybody, but they only want to represent a certain class of people. So basically in Pettigrew, we don't have nobody in there. In Central, because it's all beer drinkers, nobody wants to drink beer. But I'm waiting for city councils to come and drink beer in Central District and get rid of their $9 a glass of wine at Minerva's.
Anyone else here to speak on this? Good evening.
Mike again. I just want to say thanks. I want to thank Marshall for bringing this up. I think this is a matter of time. This will come up no matter what. I think it's a good move. I think there's 2 ways to look at this. I mean, yes, the mayor should be the highest paid city officer. I think he has the most responsibility, and that should be a no-brainer. And that 2, I think it's I think it's, basically, this is just basically updating the charter to where we are today. I mean, the dollar amount can be arbitrary, but I think it's just, I think what Marshall's trying to get at is just updating the charter to where we are today. I mean, to where we are today, after all, I mean, because you get raises every year anyway, right? So this just updates it to today's standard and go from there. I think it kind of highlights a few other issues that I've often thought in the last couple of years also. I mean, if we were to do this, what's your thoughts of just removing the annual raises and binding everything to a 2-year election cycle? So everything's fit, so then that way you're not getting raises every year, but bound to the election cycle itself. I mean, and then the last, I mean, could we put this on is it better to put it on the 22 ballot or the 2024 ballot? Because I think it got brought up during the revision commission. Too many things on the ballot might confuse the voters. And I think with the mayor running for re-election, I think some people might look at that kind of different also. But I do believe that the mayor should be the highest paid. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight? All right, let's get a motion. We can go into discussion here. The motion would be to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, December 21.
Move approval.
Second, Nitzert.
All right, motion by Selberg, seconded by Nitzert. Discussion, council, on this item. Councilor Brecky and then Councilor Nitzert.
Just some questions. Can you give me some background on the selection of the amount at $195,000? What is the basis for arriving at that particular number?
That was right around the level of the top, as we're speaking of compensations for department heads. That was in the range of the top ones, making that range too. And I think I'd also throw out the fact that as far as calling any other positions out on what they're doing or any of that point, that is not the point of this either. I think the people that are being compensated for what they're doing are getting wage they should. But this, I think, again, is back to the argument that if you're sitting at the chief of an organizational chart, it would only make sense, I think, to be making along the levels of the top wage in there, and that's pretty much the number that we came up with right in that range.
And just a few more follow-up questions, because I just want to, again, I'm just wanting to know the basis for it. And I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to visit with you earlier. I've been unavailable this week, so I wanted to just ask these questions. But so how many, what directors are we looking at as the highest paid directors? Like, how many directors are in that range?
We could put up the list of all directors and what they make. I didn't really, again, feel the need to put it up, and I'm not trying to call anybody out on that, but basically every director makes more than the mayor. I think all but maybe one. And as far as the highest wages, I believe we've got a couple right in that 194.5, 198 range.
And then the lowest, just a mini max is what I'm
I think, I don't see one looking at the deal here any lower than the mayor. There's a couple in the range of lower 130s. There's then it's to 150. Then there's 160s. There's 170s. There's 190s.
And then one of the citizens testified that one is the 75,000 with the adjustment for inflation. Was that correct, that the actual wage right now is 130 is what the mayor's currently making?
Correct.
So he would be currently he would be placed at the lowest end of the director range.
Correct.
Based on what you just told me. And then just another question, has anybody looked at, what other cities are compensating their mayors? Cities like Duluth, Cedar Rapids, ones that we frequently compare ourselves to.
Done a lot of work on that for months, and I know Jim David in our office has been very helpful in pulling up homework and numbers too. The hard part is to get apples to apples, because there's a lot of different forms of government. You've got city managers. As far as getting one to apples to Sioux Falls in our form of government, we didn't find a real good apples to apples one on that too. So I guess we've kind of kept, after looking at all those different angles that way, trying to keep the argument for the folks to the simple facts of what we're stating. For the folks that are running this city and what they're being compensated, we think that the chief executive should be compensated in a manner that matches the rest of that. I think if you pull up the salary, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average mean for a CEO in Sioux Falls is $263,770. I would say corporations, again, are size of the businesses, I would think, run into the range of, well, again, what we're talking about with the city of Sioux Falls. So this adjustment obviously is nowhere near that number, which is an average for that way. So we kind of went about it that route because, again, an apples to apples was tough. I know what you're asking. We've asked that question. I don't know if Jim had any input on that too, but I think we went around that bend quite a few times. So.
Just, yeah, a question of Jim. Can you just kind of tell me what you found? And again, I'm just looking at mini-max. I just want to know what's out there. I mean, I think city managers are applicable because that's the same responsibilities that our mayor has under this form of government. So city managers, strong mayor, what did you find? Just a range.
Yeah, if you look at, and as Councilor Selberg had said, several communities are manager form of government, and so you're going to have the salary of the council member actually being sometimes higher, but the mayor being substantially lower. You look at different communities, and we've looked at Omaha, Lincoln, and those are in probably the 120s, the 130s level, right? You know, but I think part of the conversation too with Councilor Selberg was looking at Sioux Falls, looking at the current situation that exists in the labor market and making it competitive. But if you look at other like Lincoln and Omaha, both strong mayor forms of government, and those are probably in that 120 to 130,000 level.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Counselor Neitzert, and then I'll go to Counselor Jensen.
Yeah, just, you know, as this was introduced to me and I took a look at it, it was looking around different jurisdictions. It was really all over the map, and so it was hard to draw, you know, like, is there some magic number or best practice? And I guess as I thought about it, you know, if you're running for mayor, you have to be a citizen of the city of Sioux Falls, so your talent pool is coming from here in the city. So obviously, you know, obviously it's a public service. The point is not, you know, compensation, but obviously that's going to drive some people's thought process. It just is. It's a full-time job, and they may have to walk away from certain careers. So that's part of the discussion. So I guess for me, looking at what comparable position somebody maybe running a large organization in the city might be making, what was maybe a little more valuable than what maybe somebody in Cedar Rapids was making. I mean, if there was a good, you know, correlation or a good, you know, number that kind of kept popping out, that'd be one thing, but it really was kind of all over the map. I do want to thank Councilor Selberg for tackling this because it's, let's be honest, it's just a sensitive subject because there's just optics with it. I would just remind that this would be sent to the voters. It would be up to them, obviously, either way. Charter Revision has been talking about this for multiple years now, and they've kind of struggled with it. And one of the things 2 or 3 years ago that they ran into is much the same as what we saw, which is the numbers are kind of all over the place. So trying to figure out like what is a magic number to pick is very difficult. There's a little bit of science and a little bit of art to this. I think it's just something that's needed to be looked at for quite a long time. But it's a touchy subject, so nobody's wanted to. So credits Councilor Selberg for tackling it, and I think it's a good discussion. And if it goes through again, it's up to the voters either way, and we would honor whichever their decision was.
Counselor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, while I was doing the research on this, and I just appreciate Councilor Selberg's bringing this forward and allowing the voters to vote on it. There is nothing more American than throwing something on the ballot and allowing the people that decide who sit up here the ability to decide this. But just for a matter of your perspective, Councilor Brecky, you asked, what does Cedar Rapids mayor make? And I would say there's a little difference of mayor versus city manager, but their city manager makes $256,000 a year, and that's Cedar Rapids. A lot of the people that are in our community are also working down in Cedar Rapids from a development standpoint, so we're very apples to apples comparison, a little different form of government, but Councilor Selberg's position is not outrageous at all. And actually, we're probably a more competitive market than Cedar Rapids, in my opinion, for, a lot of the stuff that's happened in the last year. So I don't think this is out of line. We're allowing the taxpayers, the citizens of our city, to decide this for us. So I think we put it on to a second reading, put it on the ballot, and let the voters decide. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Other comments on this item tonight? All right, seeing none, look for we have a motion, excuse me. So if there's no other discussion, we will go ahead and vote on it, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Brecky.
Yes.
All right, that one passes 7-0. We'll move on to item 14, please.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, proposing 2 city charter amendments for the 2022 April election under the authority of Charter Article 8, Charter Amendment, Section 8.801B. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, December 21st, 2021. Sponsors, council members Kylie and Erickson.
Counselor Kylie.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'll get to the quick of it. This proposed charter amendment would allow the city council to initiate dismissal of the city attorney. And I'll address it more. This proposal is about the position. It is not about the current occupant of the position. But there are 2 amendments here. The first one is very brief under 2.05, if you could scroll that up just a little bit. As you can see, we just needed to address it in this section as well, so there wasn't any conflict, by adding except as authorized by Charter Section 4.03. Okay, now if we go back down to 4.03, the first line there is really kind of a clarification. It's 5 or more members of the council versus just majority. I think it brings more clarity to that. It has to be 5. It's not a majority of the body. It's not the majority of the members present, but it's 5. Okay, and then the next line where it states an affirmative vote of 6 or more members of the council, or this is a key change here where it would require 6 or more members of the city council to actually initiate this, the firing or dismissal of the city attorney. And then it continues on. Again, the next one is just more clarification, 5 or more members of the council, and that is the mayor, with the consent of 5 or more members of the council. That is just really kind of a clarification of what's already been in our particular charter. It gets down to, it states towards the bottom of 4.03, the legal officer shall serve as chief legal advisor to the city council, the mayor. Well, it's a chief legal advisor to the city council. Never have I ever had somebody work for an organization or work for me in particular or the organization which I work for that we've not been able to initiate the dismissal or firing of that individual. Currently, this council does not have that ability to do that, even though the city council or the city attorney works for the city council. The very last line there, the role of the legal officer is to provide counsel in the best interest of the city, not the interest of one inquiring source. That's just additional legal or additional clarification, and that's been adopted from the 9th edition, the 2021 9th edition of the Model City Charter, which, by the way, this proposal is supported by the most recent Model City Charter. Then if we can go to the next page, sections 3 and 4 are not changes, but again, just brings more clarity. If the majority of the registered voters of the city voting upon these proposed charter amendments vote in favor of them, these charter amendments shall become effective 30 days after the initial canvass certifying this adoption by the voters. And pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 91913, this ordinance provides for an election and shall become effective upon its passage and publication. So this body is just moving it forward to the ballot coming up in April of 2022. Again, I want to state that this is about the position, not the current occupant. Originally, there had been discussion about deferring the enactment of this till 2024, just to help drive that point across, that it's about the position and not the current city attorney. But it was decided because there are the possibility of other charter amendments on the ballot, we did not want to confuse the issue as to when one's enacted and when one is not enacted. So ultimately decided to make it effective 30 days following the election, so it would be enacted in 2022. As I've stated, it's supported by the 2021 9th edition of the Model City Charter, which is our form of government, which is what our form of government is based on. Assistant City Attorney Karen Leonard is here if you've got any questions regarding the legality and form of this proposal. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight?
Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. Well, I do support this and very well will vote for it and encourage others to vote for it. I do think it's a little strange that we're asking the voters to vote on something for letting the council terminate the city attorney, and then the next thing on the agenda, which I will talk about when it comes to that, it talks about letting that person bounce back to a different job. Okay. Anyway, I have felt the main change that the city should make is that the city attorney and the police chief should be elected positions. I believe that as appointed positions, the city attorney and the police chief, they feel like they have a master. And we know who their master is, the person who appointed them. And their master should be the citizens of this town. And our city attorney should be representing the city in the best interests of the taxpayers. That's what this city is about. I always tell people, city government's easy. You collect taxes, you pay it, you spend it on services. Like I said, I support this. But I actually think the best way to go is to elect some of these positions instead of playing this game about all the city attorney's not doing the mayor's work. He's not doing the council's work. He's not doing the work of the citizens. Actually, I haven't seen a head city attorney for a very long time do the work of protecting the citizens. I see them protecting the city a lot, especially when it comes to like code enforcement and stuff like that. But like I said, I support this, and I think we need to really look at some other options about how we can get better people in that office, and just some rewriting of the charter qualifications. I think a city attorney should have a qualification understanding municipal law. That would be a nice thing, So just to keep some of those other things in mind, like I said, I support this, even though it's probably not really the best way to go. Thanks.
Sierra Broussard, Sioux Falls. We support it, but again, the chief of police needs to be elected and the city attorney by the public. City attorney works by everybody, not just for City Hall. And then we need to educate the city attorney's office with stuff that happened 2 weeks ago. So we need to make sure that we have a city attorney that knows how government works in the city, so we don't have to make complaints against government. So we got to make sure they're qualified in that, if y'all know what I'm talking about with the complaint. So we got to make sure that all council members is on board and the city attorney is knowledgeable about open meetings violations. So we got to make sure when we're going through the hiring process that we make sure that they're knowledgeable about that, because they are attorneys. But I think, and I don't know if I'm going to do a petition drive. I said this a couple of years ago. We'll see where we at next election here. But we can do a petition drive to where the citizens vote for their own city chief of police and their own city attorney. They do it in other states and other cities. It's not like they don't do it in other cities and other states, because they do. South Dakota's behind a little bit on time. We'll get there eventually. So the next time that we put a city attorney in, we need to make sure that they know the laws and not violate anything. So that's a big part of city government, and the city attorney's job is to make sure that meetings are conducted in a fashion that don't violate laws on city or state levels.
All right, anyone else from the public speak on this one? All right, let's get a motion on the floor. We can go into discussion. To be a motion to set a date, a second reading for Tuesday, December 21st.
Move to approve.
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Kylie, seconded by Jensen. Discussion here.
Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Jensen.
Counselor Kylie, I have one question. Maybe it's in two parts, but what does the process for this look like for actually putting it in motion, getting it in front of us on a first reading, second reading type of process? Is it just two counselors have to sign off on it? Or is it the mayor could put this on if he or she so chose at the time? Can you just explain that a little just to make sure we're crystal clear on that?
Absolutely. I mean, the mayor could have brought this just himself, or as you stated, two counselors working together and signing off on this particular proposal could put it on the agenda as well.
All right, any other discussion here on this one? Counselor Neitzert, go ahead.
I'm sure the due diligence has been done, but since I haven't, I'll just ask the question. Is there any restriction with state law or city ordinance that, in terms of, that created any issues with this supermajority requirement?
Not that I'm aware of. I'll ask Assistant City Attorney Leonard to address that.
Karen Leonard, Deputy City Attorney. Thank you for asking that question. You're a home rule chartered municipality, and in state law, it does say that it is up to the governing body to set the conditions of the city attorney. That's found in SDCL 9-14-23. So you have the ability to take a charter amendment to the voters and ask them to change how the city attorney is appointed and removed. And that was done in 2014. There was minor revisions made then. And now it's being requested of you again, if you adopt this ordinance, that would go to the voters to approve that. What I did look at is, as a home ruled municipality, you don't want to be less stringent than state law. And so I looked at how it was done by a commission form of government or an aldermanic form of government. And in both of those, it would be by a majority vote. So you're actually being more stringent by having a supermajority vote if the council decided to remove the city attorney. And then you have the other option where if the mayor brought it, it would be by a majority vote or the consent.
And then the other question is, I believe in charter, it specifically spells out that an ordinance is passed with the affirmative vote of 5. But I would assume the removal would not be an ordinance. It would either be a motion or some other mechanism.
Right, I'm glad you asked that question. And so in 2014, it was removal by majority of the council, and it was by motion and vote. It's an administrative function, and so it was our thought process is that you would bring a motion and put it on your calendar. If you wanted to do that, it wouldn't be subject to the referendum process because it's an administrative function.
Just like we would do, I believe, we do motions
It's a-
to appoint
Right, it's
an
a
officer.
personnel matter.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion on this item? All right, let's vote on that motion on the floor then, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Neitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Brecky.
Yes.
That passes 7-0. We'll move to item 15.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 39, Personnel Regulations and Benefits, Retirement and Pensions, Section 39.036, Application to Appoint of Officers, Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, December 21st, 2021. Sponsors, council members Kylie and Erickson.
Counselor Kylie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is basically a companion proposal to the previous proposal for the charter amendment. And I'll just go through the changes. It basically brings back the ability for an assistant city attorney to apply for the position of city attorney, and then if removed from office, would have that ability if they are in good standing, and that's clarified in this now, to go back to their previous position within city government. So under Section B, we just simply added except for, and then the city attorney, we added that. Following police, the word chief, that was just more grammatical. But under B, we added city attorney. And then under C, again, we added city attorney with the same grammatical change by adding chief. And then with additional verbiage to bring clarity of intent, upon his or her removal from a point of office or absence of reappointment or resignation in good standing, we wanted to make sure that we had that in there. So that, because we all know that there are occasions where individuals resign and it's in less than good standing status. So we wanted to make sure we had resignation in good standing added to that. Be returned to his or her former position and pay grade and classification. And then again, it was necessary to add the word city attorney down towards the very bottom of Section C. As I mentioned, this is a companion proposal, and it is meant to encourage promotion from within, because there's a great amount of history that our assistant city attorneys would bring to this position of city attorney. They would hit the road running. There wouldn't be, would not be needed to necessary to get up to speed with city government and with our city ordinances, because they would bring that history with them. Also, when we discussed the previous proposal for the charter amendment, we asked, well, what could be some of the negative impacts that could result from allowing the city council to basically, a supermajority of the city council, to dismiss or fire the city attorney. And one thought was that we bring the bump back and put it back in place for our assistant city attorneys, or for this particular position rather, to encourage those from within city government to actually apply for the position. So I would encourage your support.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one tonight? Can you wait to talk till you're up to the mic so we can get all your audio on the mic?
I'm sure you can, because if I yell, then you'll have a problem with that too. So if you don't like it, you can remove yourself. So we're going to start out with this. So Stacy Koister was not working for the city of Sioux Falls. So not everybody that's going to get a position in this will be a city attorney. So if we have an outside source, where are we going to put him? So right now, if we have a bump back in that, where are we going to put Stacy Koister? So you're saying that it's going to be protection for city attorneys going for the position. But what if you have an outsider coming in? What are we going to do with him, Mr. Kiley? What are we going to do with that position there? And do they got some protection? Can we bump them back if the mayor doesn't like Stacy? We get rid of Stacy. Where's Stacy going? This is ridiculous.
Scott Ersman, Sioux Falls. Yeah, it is ridiculous. We're trying to give basically union rights to city directors. They don't have union rights. They get incredible salaries, they get incredible benefits packages, they get incredible pensions. They shouldn't have union rights. And you guys always want to compare the city to a corporation. So why don't we do that with this? Basically, at a private business, if somebody is an assistant manager and they apply to be the general manager, somebody underneath him is going to get up into his old position or her position. So if he gets fired or he quits and he can't handle that position and Bob has to move back to his old position, you're pushing all these people back behind him out of the way. It messes up a lot of other people's lives. And then it creates a morale issue. And like Sierra said, our current city attorney isn't from the city. What would you bounce a person back to if they never had a position to begin with? This is ridiculous. I don't believe in this bounce back. If you applied for the job and you accepted the position and you can't handle it, or you quit or you get fired, that's life. That's how it works in the real world. And someone as an adult and a professional, like a lawyer who went to school for this and passed a bar, should have the knowledge to know that in the real world, if you can't handle the job, you leave, you go bye-bye. I find it ironic that I wonder how many more of these proposals are going to pop up between now and April, because the two people proposing this are on the way out the door. It has this domino effect. If they couldn't handle being the lead city attorney, why would we want him still in the city attorney's office giving us advice? You told him he wasn't good enough to have the lead job. Why would you want to keep him around? The same way with the police chief and the fire chief. It's silly. I mean, it reminds me of when the city council broke open meetings laws and fired a city clerk. They had to replace that lady with 3 people that are still working for the city. 3 people. I mean, do you look at history? Do you look at things before you propose stuff like this? If I took a job at $200,000 a year and I couldn't handle it, I knew what would happen when I resigned. I would go away. I wouldn't stay in the organization. It's unfair to the taxpayers, and it's unfair to the other city employees who maybe got bumped up once this person got bumped up. What are we going to do with them?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak on this tonight? All right, can we get a motion on the floor, and then we'll move into discussion to be to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, December 21?
Move to approve.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Kylie, seconded by Sale. Discussion on this, council. Councilor Sale and then Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Had a little history in this, and let me be clear on how this works. The ordinance says to bump back to their prior position. If they did not have a prior position with the city, there is no going back to something that is created. As years gone by, one of the reasons this was in the city ordinances is because if you would have a friend that would be elected mayor and he wanted to put his hunting buddy in the police chief or fire chief, would give that individual an opportunity to move back to their position. They had to be in good standing. They weren't removed for cause. This has happened with the city when we had police fire commission. Somebody would be promoted because they were their hunting buddies, the same lodge, the same block, whatever. So the person that was in the position could move back to his prior position. There had to be an opening and they could move back. That's why the bump back was there. But if you read it, they have to have come from a prior city position. So there might be some misunderstanding there. I'd appreciate everybody read it as we go forward so that we can discuss the facts. Thank you.
Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just think simply put, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's overdue. I appreciate Councilor Kylie and Erickson's work on it and wholeheartedly support it. Thank you.
Councilor Kylie, go ahead.
And I thank Councilor Sale for making that clarification. If they were not part of city government, they would be out of a position. We would not create a position to place them in. If they were not previously in city government, they would be out of a position with city government. So I think Councilor Sale clarified that, and I appreciate that. And I think it was a good point to bring up because it needed clarification. And also the other thing that Councilor Sale brings up, the mayor, and it would be in effect, the mayor has the ability to choose not to reappoint a city attorney at the end of his or her mayoral term. That doesn't go away. And it doesn't require consent of the city council to do that either. So theoretically, as Councilor Sales stated, every 4 to 8 years, a new mayor could appoint a new person for whatever that reason may be. And so it's just, I think, again, to preserve the history that our assistant city attorneys can bring the position, or our deputy city attorney could bring the position, I think this would be a wise move to make. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Other discussion? Counselor Brecky.
Just, the history of it was that initially all appointed positions had what we call bump back rights. And then that was banned altogether, or deleted, removed, and now we're kind of going back piecemeal. We've said the police chief, the fire chief, and now we've added city attorney. Was there any discussion about going back to the original, the original provision that said all appointed officials had bump back rights? And then again, just to further that history, the rationale behind that was because these positions are political. And sometimes it has nothing to do with the performance of the individual, but it's just could be a personality conflict with, a new administrators and things like that. And in order to encourage the talent from the mid-management ranks to move up, the idea was if you gave them those bump back rights, they could do so knowing that if it didn't work out for political or other reasons, again, you had to be in good standing and the position there had to be a position open, then you could do it. It only happened 3 or 4 times that I recall, and it worked out just fine. I mean, there was no problems that it caused, and we did continue to hang on to that talent, at the mid-management level because something didn't work out at the management level. So just, asking that question, did you have that discussion again? And is there any interest in that, I guess, just going back to that original provision philosophically?
Thank you for the question, Councilor Brecky. At this point, we focus just on this position for the city attorney, and again, for the reason that I didn't state, being legal counsel for a governmental entity like the city of Sioux Falls or St. Paul, Minneapolis, whatever city, it's very unique and it's very different. It's unlike being a legal counsel for a law firm or somebody who is in private practice. So I believe it's very unique, like being a police chief and a fire chief, which is very rank and file positions as well. So I thought it warranted the discussion to bring the bump back in this particular case. And again, we addressed it just for this. We did not consider the other positions at this time.
Any other discussion on this, council? All right, hearing none, let's vote on the motion on the floor, please.
Councilmembers Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
No.
Brecky.
Yes.
All right, that passes 6-1. Next item, please.
Item 16 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, correcting the Exhibit A of Resolution Number 80-21, sponsor Mayor.
Kurt?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Kurt Peppel with Public Works. Item 16 is a correction resolution for Resolution 80-21 that was approved back in August. We discovered an error on the original right-of-way vacation exhibit. This is out near Madison and Veterans Parkway. Correction resolution is necessary to ensure the filed documents are accurate. Engineering requests your support and approval.
Thanks, Kurt. Anyone from the public want to speak on this? Council, can we get a motion on this?
Move approval, Jensen.
Second, Kylie.
All right, motion by Jensen, seconded by Kylie. Any discussion here? All right, let's vote on this one, please.
Councilmembers Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale, Star,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
All right, that passes 6-0. Next item, please.
Item 17 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, correcting the legal description of Annexation Resolution Number 118-21, Annexation Legal Description Correction 015085-2021, Tract 1 and Tract 2 of Lamers Edition.
Good evening, Jeffrey Schmidt, representing Planning and Development Services on these three annexations. This is the Lammers edition down the southwest part of town. You annexed it back on October 12th, and it's actually in Minnehaha County, not Lincoln County, and so we had to make the legal correction on that. Just a small issue, so.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Anyone from the public here to speak on this? Council, got any questions here?
Move approval. Nicer.
Second, Selberg.
Motion by Nitzert, seconded by Selberg to approve 17. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale, Star,
Yes.
Brecky.
Yes.
All right, that passes 6-0. Next item.
Item 18 is a resolution including certain contiguous territory within the corporate limits of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Annexation 015359-2021, Tract 1A, Fishinek Edition.
This is a property owner requested annexation. It's at 81st Street and Minnesota Avenue. It's 2 acres of land. It's in the Harrisburg School District, and it's being brought in from the property owners to the south there, and in the interim, they're going to use it for conservation, recreation purposes.
Thanks, Jeff. Anyone from the public here to speak on 18? All right, council, any questions here?
Move approval, Jensen.
Second, Selberg.
All right, motion by Jensen, seconded by Selberg to approve item 18. Discussion here. All right, let's vote, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Brecky.
Yes.
All right, that one passes 7-0. Item 19.
A resolution of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, correcting the legal description of Annexation Resolution Number 28-21, Annexation Legal Description Correction 013782-2021, Southeast Quarter Schoenwaller Edition, sponsor Mayor.
This was annexed back in March of this year, and the legal description is the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter of, and it went in as the east quarter of the southeast quarter. And so when they went to finalize it 7-8 months later, they asked for the correction. So we're bringing it forward.
All right. Anyone from the public here to speak on 19 tonight? Any questions, council, for Jeff?
Move approval.
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Selberg, seconded by Jensen to approve this item. Any discussion here? All right, let's vote on this one, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Brecky.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Move to item 20, please.
A resolution amending the City of Sioux Falls engineering design standards, sponsor Mayor.
Good evening, Andy.
Evening, Mayor, Council, Andy Berg, Public Works. Coming forward tonight with some updates to our engineering design standards. There are 4 chapters that we're proposing to change, chapters 4, 8, 11, and 15. Majority of the revisions, I apologize for the length of the attachments. It's a lot of pages with a lot of just reference updates, non-substantive changes, but want to step through some changes that are of relevance. And then also on chapters 8, 11, and 15, there are some updates based on the Annexation Task Force report. Our timeline, we've been through the IRAB process for approval and recommendation from the IRAB board. We spoke to the council at the informational last week. Following approval, if you choose to do so tonight, this resolution, the design standards will become effective in January of 22. Chapter 4, utility locations and city utility easements. This is an area where we're seeing more private streets being constructed, so we're bringing forward some standards related to public utilities being placed under those private streets. It speaks to utility separation and locations under those streets, easement widths associated with each of those different utilities, and then clearly identifying where they are, public versus private, and ensuring that there's access for all of those operations and maintenance of those utilities that are ours. And then also still allows for private utilities to be put in these areas where there is no upstream properties served or in gated communities. Chapter 8, street design and pavement thickness. There are a few different sections in here. Access permit, this is removing the requirement for an access permit at those quarter-mile locations, quarter and three-quarter-mile locations. Non-standard locations still require that access permit. Major collectors, dropping that from 30 to 25 miles an hour, removing continuous for 2 miles or more, as that is something that we just don't see as often the way things develop these days. Clarifying that multifamily construction across from an RD1 zoning would still be would be classified as a major collector. And then changing the street widths from 41 to 39, which would be equivalent to the minor collector. Minor collector changes, also removing that continuous for 2 miles or more, and then also allowing for a higher zoning use adjacent to those. With the prior zoned areas where they had fourplexes adjacent to a street, we were requiring that to be a major collector with 80 foot of right-of-way. This is adding that fourplex and lower to be part of which is part of the RD1 zoning. If it's on both sides or across from single family, then that can be a minor collector, which is a 66 foot right-of-way width. Traffic lane widths, basically just changing the language rather than 11-foot traffic lane being the minimum, that is the standard. We do have the ability to go to a narrower street if there's traffic calming or other reasons for that. Bicycle paths, changing that name of section 8.4 to shared use paths. This is to complement some of the ADA guidelines out there and federal highway comments. Pedestrian traffic also was renamed to pedestrian accommodations through work zones, working through better regulation on pedestrian passage through construction zones as far as what ADA is looking for, federal highway, our MUTCD requirements associated with that. And then 814 is the annexation piece that I referenced. This area is based on the Annexation Task Force report recommendations, going with minimum surfacing width of 24 feet, 26 where there are fire hydrants. And then for the surfacing requirements, local streets can be gravel, and then the collectors have to be an asphalt surface with a minimum of 4 inches of thickness. Chapter 11 is also annexation related, and that is after January 1 of 2018, they're not required to have sump pump collection systems installed with the annexation unless either included in the agreement or required based on a needed for mitigating nuisance issues in the area. And then chapter 15 is also annexation related, and that is existing rural subdivisions annexed into the city after January of 18 are not required to have street lights installed with the annexation unless it is agreed upon in the annexation agreement. So I went kind of fast on that, but open it up to any questions.
Thanks, Andy. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight? Council, you got any questions for Andy on any of these? Councilor Neitzer, go ahead.
2 or 3 questions. First, can you go back to the slide with the 25 to 30 mile an hour?
Yes.
So what is that trying to change? Can you explain in the real world what that's saying? Change posted from?
Our design standards had it called out that major collectors could have a 30 mile per hour, could be posted greater than or equal to 30 miles an hour. We're dropping that. Our ordinances reference 25 miles an hour, so it's really cleaning it up, but it also allows us to have those major collectors posted at 25 miles an hour, which I believe occurs quite often.
Okay, so there'd be the opportunity to do it and it harmonizes with city ordinance.
Correct.
Okay, and then what wasn't one of the reasons I remember that thing about the 2 miles, having a 2 mile continuous collector, wasn't part of that also that once they start getting so long they become kind of de facto arterials, and then you try to discourage that as well? or was that part of this discussion?
If I need to, I might ask Shannon to come up, but the general idea is this, that we didn't see a lot of it happening, and people were pointing to it as a design standard, saying, well, it's not a major collector then, because it's not contiguous for 2 miles. Well, a lot of factors played into that, you know, whether both sides owners wanted to deviate off of that, or wetlands created a hindrance to it. There are a lot of different factors that the way people are developing property today just didn't lend itself to that being that long, continuous stretch of road along the section line. And so we removed it because it was just causing confusion and also trying to be maybe used as a way to get out of using a major collector when it was meeting all of the real traffic needs for that.
Okay. It seems like there was maybe some traffic calming too, that you don't want people to be using collectors as essentially arterials if they're so long that people are just using those and then they're driving up and down.
Yeah, and through some of our recent traffic calming measures that we've trialed and piloted in other areas, those are ones we have focused on where it's a very long, continuous segment that's got the wide right-of-way in there. And so, yeah, that's a good point.
Is Bonson a collector or an arterial?
Collector.
Okay, so that may even be an example of 2 miles or more. And then the last thing is, so as far as this, the street width reduced on major collectors, so something like Stony Creek or Mary Beth, what collectors are those? Okay, so give me an example of something that this would show. So like a developer presumably could then build a narrower street, is the point here. They could go a little bit narrower.
A lot of more development we're seeing now, speaking to the housing type thing, we're seeing a lot more appeal to the twin homes, duplexes, fourplexes, that type of thing. Our prior standards identified if those were along a roadway that qualified for 80-foot of right-of-way and a major collector designation. Through a lot of discussion at IRAB and with the development community, with those areas, we agreed that they aren't generating a significantly higher volume of traffic that would warrant that major collector. So we have added that RD1 zoning, which speaks, I think it's up to a fourplex. It doesn't go to the eightplexes or higher than that, but up to a fourplex would be allowed with a 66-foot right-of-way street, minor collector designation. So doesn't chew up as much real estate for those developers, and it still meets our traffic needs.
Is a street designation of collector being minor or major depend on like the land use? Like if it's all zoned to RA for apartments, you would make them build a major collector, which would be wider, and then.
Correct.
But now if it's like all twin homes, they could potentially do this narrower minor collector?
Correct. If on the major collector, that third bullet, if that fourplex zoning was on one side of the street and the other was multifamily apartments, it would be a major collector. If it was that RD1 zoning on both sides, then it can be the minor. So as the higher densities push it up to that major collector status.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other questions tonight for Andy from the council? All right, look for a motion, please.
Move approval. Nitzert?
Second, Kylie.
All right, motion by Nitzert, seconded by Kylie to approve item 20. Any discussion there? Counselor Kylie, go ahead.
Just very quickly, last week I did ask about some other aspects or some of the recommendations that came out of the annexation task force about if they were implemented in administrative policy either through ordinance or resolution. We will continue to look into that and clarify that. I'm very happy to support this evening.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion here? All right, let's vote on this, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr, Brecky.
Yes.
Okay, that passes 6-0. Next item.
Item 21 is a resolution vacating North Sycamore Avenue right-of-way from the north right-of-way line of East 60th Street North to the south right-of-way line of Interstate 90 as shown on Exhibit A. Recommendation, set a date of hearing for Tuesday, January 11th, 2022. Sponsor, Mayor.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This section line right-of-way is an extension of Sycamore Avenue, and you may recognize it as it is on the Public Safety Training Center site. Engineering prepared the right-of-way vacation petition pursuant to South Dakota law and complies with our street vacation policy. Vacating the right-of-way is necessary for development of the site. And engineering requests that you set the date of hearing for January 11th, 2022.
All right, Kurt, thanks. Anyone from the public here to speak on this? Council, got any questions for Kurt?
Move approval, Jensen.
Second, Selberg.
Okay, motion by Jensen, seconded by Selberg, set a date of hearing for Tuesday, January 11, 2022. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on that, please.
Council members Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star, Brecky.
Yes.
Okay, that passes 6-0. Any new business tonight, council? All right, we'll move to general public input. Just a reminder, 3 minutes per person, and on topics that we didn't talk about earlier in the evening. Come on up.
Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. Just for the record, I think there was been some accusations. I've lived in Sioux Falls for 30 years. I've been coming to council meetings for over 20 years. I've helped elect 4 city councilors, and I'm very well aware of what goes on in this city government. So if anyone wants to question why I ask some of the things that I do. I also have always lived within the central district of Sioux Falls and not in the suburb 40 miles away. Anyway, a couple of things. The Charter Revision Commission needs to be all thrown out. We need to get a Charter Revision Commission in there that actually wants to put stuff on the ballot instead of voting against massive conflicts of interest, voting against proposals. And when it comes to public input, we should always preserve public input. And I know there's an open meetings violation against the city on this that was filed. I don't understand our hatred towards public input. Tonight, one of the officials on the dais mouthed some unpleasant words at me. We'll get to that later and don't appreciate being treated that way. You already pushed us to the end of the meeting and limited us to 3 minutes. What more do you want? Want to stick socks in our mouths too when you want to put that in city ordinance? Lastly, one of my biggest concerns is, you know, when communities have problems, and it doesn't mean Sioux Falls, it can mean Brandon, it can mean Minneapolis, it can mean Chicago, it can mean Seattle. Usually those communities come together and they put a task force together and they get people from all different sectors of the community to solve a problem. We have a problem at 8th and Indiana, and nobody wants to talk about it. We continually send the police there over and over and over again. Nobody on the council, nobody in the Catholic diocese, nobody at the Dudley House, nobody in the surrounding businesses, nobody in the neighborhoods are getting together to talk about how we're going to have a solution to this problem. We're just going to keep throwing the cops out there and keep throwing taxpayer money at it and not fixing the problem. 20% of police calls come from one intersection in this city, and we don't think it's a concern, and we don't think that we should put a task force together to try to solve this problem. There's no one solution. I don't have a solution, but maybe you should get together and have a public meeting and talk about solutions. It's ridiculous. All we're doing is ignoring the problem. We're going to ignore it until the election and ignore it after that? Come on. Come on. Let's do our job.
Anyone else for public input?
I want to thank the chair and council for not having no open meetings violations. It's very good when you don't silence the citizens here, okay? So thank you for that. The 2 violations that I have with the state attorney's office is still pending, and we'll use that against our next election coming up. I'm sure that the state attorney's office will, in a couple of weeks, come up with his verdict. So just wait for some open violations either on city or state, but it's gonna be out. And I don't care if it's a city violation, but a violation's a violation, so it looks bad on everybody, even when you're running. So we have an issue here with the police department. A human trafficker of an 8-year-old girl, I'm not even gonna get into the graphics of it, so I've called the state attorney's office on this. We have a communications problem when people call that tip line at the police department. Those complaints are not getting into the hands of detectives, and I'm gonna tell you right now, don't never question that I'm sitting up here lying, because I caught it. Very gruesome of what happened to 8-year-old in a baby mama projects, that they call it, of the 3500 block of an apartment building. I sat there in witnesses' houses while they called the police on Crime Stoppers and reported this. And they seem to don't know where the complaint went. So the mayor needs to fix that. As the investigation goes on more, I'll open my mouth more on it. But when sexual assaults happen of children, we need to be on this. I was 6 hours into this investigation. If I wouldn't have shooken up feathers, social services, child protection, the police wouldn't have been over there. You would think the day after Thanksgiving, when the incident happened, that the police department would have the complaints in their hands. They didn't act upon it until Thursday of last week. I want y'all to pay attention to my Facebook posts when I'm putting all these people for sex offenses on my post. We need to start taking it seriously, sex crimes with children. The police have the evidence, the bread's in the pudding, and we'll see where it goes from there. I've already contacted the state attorney's office on it. But when people complain and call Crime Stoppers, it needs to go in the hands of the police department and into the right people here. I shouldn't have to be spending hours at the police department arguing with them. This is an 8-year-old girl.
All right, anyone else for public input tonight? Come on up. Good evening.
Mike Zero, Sioux Falls. I just like to say, I like to think, I'm one that I don't want to see the CRC abolished. I think I had a good experience with them this year. I like to thank the city attorney for making sure the meetings run respectfully, and Carrie Hanzo for a good job she's doing. I think people have a misconception of what the CRC is really for. I think they're mostly for bouncing ideas off, and sharing opinions of how we want learning what the charter is for. I think some people have a misconception of what I think. And then I also like to say, I think if we want to fix public input, I think we fix public input by just being more respectful and controlling our decorum. I think the mayor I think you do a good job at trying to keep it on point. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mike. Come on up, sir.
Good evening. My name is Chad Bishop. I live at 7405 South Valencia Drive here in Sioux Falls. I'll agree with Mr. Haugen earlier. The city is well run. Thank you for that. The purpose of my statements is to present an opportunity to lead the state and perhaps the nation on a contentious issue. I was glad to see the November 30th Argus Leader article informing us the city reversed its vaccine mandate policy for its healthcare professionals. I was saddened to see that it took a federal court stepping in instead of local leadership making the decision. I would respectfully request that you make this policy change permanent and in addition reimburse all city employees, whether vaccinated or not, should they choose to take a SARS-CoV-2 antibody or adaptive T-cell response assay. Should the federal executive continue to overstep its constitutional bounds, I would encourage you to support, if not join, Attorney General's relevant suits to fight for the rights of your employees and other state residents. The Argus Leader reported on October 17th that 21 months worth of state epidemiological data shows empirically that less than 1% have been reinfected. We no longer have to depend upon the recommendations of a federal regulatory authority that seems to have been wholly captured by the pharmaceutical industry. We have enough empirical data generated and maintained by the state to ascertain our own risk, and if we showed initiative, we could have the most robust serological data set in the country, which could further serve to dissolve the artificial political tension generated around the narrative of vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, instead of the immune and the unimmune. As of today, there have been 147,000 COVID-19 cases documented by the South Dakota Department of Health. Per my previous statements to this body in August, that likely represents only a fraction of the total COVID-19 recovered per the CDC's own epidemiological models. What if we were to discover that 70% of the population had durable natural immunity in addition to the vaccinated? What if we were to discover that 75% of the voluntarily vaccinated also had infection-induced N-type antibodies? What would that do to the Pfizer CEO's latest recommendation of a fourth dose of his product? What if we were to discover that upwards of 85% of the children 5 to 11 had durable natural immunity? How would that affect the parents' decisions in our community? The question I asked you both in August and now again is why aren't we doing the serology at scale, and why don't we know the answer to these questions, or to what number of South Dakotans are COVID-19 recovered? Who benefits from the absence of this information? Classical liberals used to ask and take an interest in such questions as cui bono, or they would look to follow the money. There's now over $974 million for COVID-19 relief in the state treasury in an attempt to use science to resolve these artificially divisive political issues, rebuild trust with a skeptical public, and bring clarity to policymakers at all levels within the state, including this body. I'm asking you for you to call upon state legislators and the governor to support legislation supporting funding and following health campaign proposals summarized for time here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else for public input tonight? All right, I need a motion to adjourn us then, please.
So moved, Jensen.
Second, Brecky.
All right, motion by Jensen, seconded by Brecky. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Have a good night.